August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union successfully detonated an atomic bomb. Until this point, the United States was the world's only nation with nuclear weapons. The US and Soviet Union already had a bad relationship due to the Soviet blockade of Berlin and expansion into Poland and Eastern Europe. When America initiated the Bay of Pigs attack against Cuba, one of Russia's closest allies, the situation worsened. The Bay of Pigs invasion was an attempt by CIA-trained Cuban exiles to invade southern Cuba and was launched in April of 1961. The goal of the invasion was to overthrow the Cuban government run by Fidel Castro. However, the Cuban forces defeated the invaders within 3 days. This invasion, however, created an increased hatred of the United States by Cuba. These things put together caused an intense fear of nuclear attack in America and spurred many communities to begin preparing for the worst. In 1951, Congress created the Federal Defense Administration, which helped communities protect themselves from nuclear attack. Schools became very popular locations for civil defense education programs due to the fact that they were already integrated into communities. Air raid drills became very common in schools across America. In order to be protected, children were taught to duck to avoid the things flying through the air and cover from things getting cut and burned. As a young girl, Claudette Green was one of the children impacted by these drills. Claudette lived in Madawaska, Maine, and frequently experienced the fear imposed by the drills.
1962, I would have been in 5th grade. That's when we started having the daily bomb exercises where an alarm would go off and we were trained to all huddle under our desks.
Although many children had to do these drills all over America, Claudette's were different due to her location.
Drills were so serious is that we were about 30 miles from Loring Air Force Base, which at the time was one of the biggest Air Force bases in the country. If you're attacking a country, you want to attack their means of attack. So any military base is a target. And Loring was right there at our doorstep.
During this time of impending threats, the government designated certain homes and buildings as civil defense shelters or fallout shelters.
Our house was actually the top story of my dad's business. And he had built that place like a fortress. It was all concrete and steel beams and everything. And because of that, the basement, which was actually a creamery, he made butter. He bought the cream from all the dairy farmers around. There was an area down there that the government had stamped as a civil defense shelter. And there were civil defense shelters everywhere. So for our neighborhood, our house was the shelter.
For all of Madawaska, Maine?
No, for part of Madawaska. Like usually schools, that kind of thing were all shelters. So if we were under attack, everyone in our neighborhood would flock to our house. And I didn't know if I was really wild about that idea. But we were all to hide in a portion of the creamery that had no windows. And the government had actually delivered barrels, these big metal barrels, there must have been about 20 or 30 of them, that apparently we were never allowed to open them, they were sealed, but were filled with food and water so that we could survive. I vividly remember the yellow and black sign. It was a metal plate that hung on our building. And there was a symbol on it. It was a circle with triangles in it. And it said Civil Defense Shelter. And everyone was aware that that's where they would go. So day to day, with these daily drills, we were kind of all very nervous about it.
The threat of an attack, and therefore the need for drills, after much debate, ended in October of 1962 when Kennedy ended a naval blockade he had on Cuba in exchange for the Russians removing their missiles from Cuba.
It was a huge celebration. We were so excited we didn't have to do these stupid drills anymore. But I had to, it was a scary time. It really was, because the threat was imminent.